Okay, Rabbi Sai, Guten Moed. We're going to start Maseches Horayos today. A couple of introductions. The Rambam writes that the reason why we finish Seder Nezikin with Maseches Horayos is because Horayos is all about how to correct mistakes that are made by the Sanhedrin. And you want to know something? Even though this has been all about making sure that we get the halacha right, sometimes, despite our best intentions, even the greatest of rabbis can make mistakes. And that's why we finish off with Maseches Horayos, which deals with the Torah actually has a course of action that it prescribes for when the entire Jewish people make a mistake based on the instructions of the highest leadership of Klal Yisrael. It could happen. It happens. And there's a way to rectify the mistake. There's a way to atone for the mistake. That's really what Maseches Horayos is all about. There's a lot of ambiguity that needs to be clarified regarding under what circumstances the Torah prescribes the specific korban. The Torah says, and this is the pasuk that we're going to be focusing on, V'haya im me'einei ha'eda ne'esisa lishgaga, that if from the eyes of the congregation something was hidden and something was done accidentally, the asu kol ha'eda parben bakar echad le'ola l'reich nichoach l'Hashem. Then in that case, the congregation shall bring a bull as a sin offering. Normally, an individual who sins brings a goat, but in this case, you bring a bull. Okay, so in addition to a goat. All right. In any event, that's the reason for Maseches Horayos over here. The second thing I just wanted to point out is that the language of Maseches Horayos tends to be somewhat different from the rest of the Gemaras that we've been learning most recently. As we've mentioned before, every Maseches has its slightly different cadence and flow and verbiage, and you'll see that Horayos takes a while to get used to. By the time you get used to it, we'll be finished. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's get started. Horu based in Lavor al Echas Mikol Mitzvos Amuros B'Torah, V'holach Hayachid V'asa Shogeg al Pihem. So, the Mishnah tells us that if the Sanhedrin, we're talking about the main Sanhedrin, tells us to instructs us that we can do a certain action that is in violation of one of the mitzvahs of the Torah. The classic example that is provided by the Rishonim is they tell us, for example, that it's okay to eat chaylev. Chaylev is forbidden fat in cows and sheep and goats, and they tell us to go ahead, chaylev is now permitted. And an individual goes on that basis of that psak and goes ahead and eats chaylev. So, bein sha'asu va'asa imahen, bein sha'asu va'asa achrehen, bein shalo asu va'asa patur. So it makes no difference whether he ate the chaylev together with the Sanhedrin, he ate the chaylev after the Sanhedrin had already eaten, or even if he ate it before the Sanhedrin ate it. So in other words, they didn't actually demonstrate the act of prohibition, but nonetheless, the individual is off the hook. Why? Because he was relying on Beis Din to instruct him. Mm-hmm. Had he known that they were making a mistake, he never would have eaten chaylev. And therefore he fits, according to this Mishnah, he fits into the category of the pasuk that we just discussed, that if people go ahead and act on the Beis Din's instructions that are in error, the individual bears no blame and does not even have to bring a korban chatas to atone for his sin. Now, horu Beis Din v'yada echad mehen sheto, o talmud v'hu roi lahorav halach v'asal pihen. But that's only if the person was innocent and unsuspecting. What if the individual is someone who is a member of the Sanhedrin and he knows that the majority vote of his colleagues is being made in error? He says, you guys are making a big mistake, but he gets outvoted. Or there's someone who's not a member of the Sanhedrin, but he himself is a big Talmud Chacham. And he knows the Sanhedrin is making a mistake. But he goes ahead and he eats chaylev anyway. Now, why would he eat chaylev? But he says, you know what? If they said I'm to eat it, I'm going to go eat it. Then in that situation, bein sha'asu va'asa imohen, bein sha'asu va'asa achrehen, Bein shelo asu va'asa harei zachayiv im they shelo tola beveistin. He says it doesn't make a difference whether they ate it together. He ate the chaylev together with the Sanhedrin, or they ate it first and then afterwards he ate it, or even if he ate it before they ate it. In all of those cases, he's going to be chayav a korban chatas. Why? Because he knows that they're wrong, and he's still eating it anyway. So Mendel's question is, well, then why should he bring a korban chatas? He's doing it b'mezid.
Right.
He's sinning intentionally. So why should he bring a korban chatas at all? Wasn't that your question, Mendel?
My question, wasn't there a case of someone was a yachid and the rabbin said a certain thing and he was forced to do what the rabbin did?
That's a different story.
Was there a case of that in the Gemara?
Well, there's a Mishnah in Maseches Yoma which talks about Rabbi Gamliel forcing Rabbi Yehoshua
Right.
to conform to his psak of when Yom Kippur is.
That's not
Yeah.
nice.
However, that's a situation where if Rabbi Yehoshua would have acted differently, he might have been a Zakein Mamre. He would have been a dissenting sage. So this is a fellow, he's not obligated to eat chaylev. There's no obligation. It's not like observing Yom Kippur. But he says, I'm going to do it anyway because they said it's okay. But I know they're wrong. So the question is why, really, that's the Gemara is going to ask that question, why then isn't he amazed where you don't bring a korban at all? I'd like to ask if we could suspend the questions for now because it's a very long daf and I want to get through it all. And if you have a question at the end, Alex, just let me know. Ze klal hatola ba'atzmo chayev v'hatola beveistin pater. So the general rule is that when you rely on your own judgment, in other words, you're not listening, you're eating the chaylev not because of the Beis Din's ruling, so then you're going to be liable for a korban chatas, but when you're relying on the Beis Din's ruling to eat the chaylev, so then you're going to be pater. So the Gemara now says, Omar Shmuel.
There's one question. In order to be the chiyuv, we have to have two things, the amira and the asiya. There has to be.
So you'll see. You must have learned this Gemara once before, Mr. Friedman, because that's the next shakla v'tarya. You're going to see. You're going to see. So Omar Shmuel, la'olam ein Beis Din chayavin ad sheyomer lahen mutarin atem, and Rav Dimi minahar da Omar ad sheyomer lahen mutarim atem la'asos. Right, that's the amir and the asiya that Mr. Friedman was referring to. So the machlokas between Shmuel and Rav Dimi is as follows. According to Shmuel, all the Beis Din has to say is you are permitted. In other words, they're not addressing an action, they're addressing an object. If they just say that chaylev is permitted, then that's all they need to say. And Rav Dimi argues and he says, no, they have to say you're permitted to eat chaylev. They have to identify the action itself that they are advocating the people do. Okay? And my time, l'fishalo nigmara hora. Because until they tell you actually what you may or should do, they have not completed their instructions. So Amar Abaya af ananami tanina. So Abaya says we can infer this from the following. This is a brisa in Maseches Sanhedrin, which talks about a zakein mamre. A zakein mamre is a sage who is a member of the Sanhedrin and dissents from his colleagues. And the halacha is that even though he's insistent that he's right, he has to conform to their halachic decision. And if he doesn't, he can be put to death because of he's creating this tremendous schism. So Chazal Iro Shanav Alimed Kederach Shalimed Pater Horalasos Chayev. If he goes back to his city and he just teaches why he thinks he's correct, he has not violated the law of being a Zakin Mamre. But if he tells people, go ahead and do what I think, which is in disagreement with the majority of the Sanhedrin, so then he's chayiv as a zakin mamre, he can be put to death. So you see that he actually has to instruct people to do something in order for him to be chayiv. Amar Rabbi Abba af ananami tanina, horu la Beis Din lihinase, v'holcha v'kilka l'chayivus bekarban, shelo hitiru la ela lihinase. This can be inferred from a halach in Maseches Yevamos also, where the Brisa says that if a woman is an aguna, and based on one witness's testimony, the Beis Din gives her permission to remarry, they have to actually specify they can't just say, okay, your husband is dead. They have to actually say you are permitted to remarry. They have to give her instructions of what action she may now take out. And the proof to that is that if she goes ahead, let's say after they told her you may remarry, and she goes ahead and has an extramarital fling with a guy, and then her husband is discovered, she is now guilty of having committed adultery unintentionally, and she has to bring a korban chatas. You see, if she would have remarried based on Beis Din's instructions that she may remarry, so then she would be off the hook from bringing a korban because she followed the instructions of Beis Din. It's not her fault. But if she has an extramarital thing, so then she's not following the actual instructions of Beis Din, who just told her remarry. So you see that Beis Din has to actually instruct her what to do. So Amar Ravina...
It relies on a memo that somebody brings an aid, not an
Understood. It's based on Beis Din's Mishum Iguna Hikilu. Amar Ravina, Af Ananami Tanina. So Ravina says, our Mishnah also proves this point, that they actually have to instruct in action. Horu Beis Din Lavor al Achas Mikol Mitzvahs Amuras B'Torah. That it says that the Beis Din instructs the people to do something. That you may now do something. You may now eat the chaylev, for example. And sulomidi. And the Gemara says this is conclusive proof. There's nothing more to bring. Meaning that this language of sulomidi implies this is an ironclad argument, and anyone who suggests that they can just point to chaylev and say it's permitted without giving instructions as to what to do with chaylev is not correct. Ika da Amri, Amar Shmuel, Ein Beis Din Chayav and Ashur Melam Mutar Matem Lasos, and Rav Dimi Nahar Do, Amar Afilu Mutar Matem Nigmar Ora. Some say that the opinions are just the opposite, that it was Shmuel who's the one who says that they have to actually describe the action that is now permitted before they are liable, right? And Rav Dimi is the one who says that it's enough for them to just say it's permitted, the object is permitted. So Amar Abaya V'Halo Tanan Hachi. So the question is on Rav Dimi now. It doesn't say that way in the Mishnah, because it says, Chazar li'iro v'shana olime kidei shalimei pater hor lasos chayev, by the case of the Zaken Mamre, that until he actually instructs people what to do, he's not liable. And Amar Rabbi Abba v'halo tanan hachi hor la based on lihinase v'halchal v'kilkal l'chayvus bekarban shlitur le'ela lihinase. By the case of Aguna, same thing. They have to give her explicit instructions to remarry, not just to say that you're permitted. Right? And Amar Ravina v'halo tanan hachi haru based in lavar lechas mikol mitzvahs amuras b'Torah. And our Mishnah also, it says that they actually have to instruct the people that they are permitted now to act upon a certain aveira, meaning like, for example, to eat chaylev. They can't just say chaylev is permitted. And sulomidi. And once again, this conclusively disproves Rav Dimi according to this version. Okay. Next, that an individual goes and commits the Aveira based on the instructions of the Sanhedrin. And he does it b'shogeg. So the Gemara's question is, V'nisni v'asa al pihem, shogeg lamali. Why did you have to insert that word shogeg? Just say that he acted based upon their ruling. That in itself is implied. That he's not, had the Beis Din not told him to do it, he never would have done it. So Amar Rava shogeg li'isuye horu Beis Din shechelev mutter v'nischalef lo chelev b'shumin va'acholo pater. Al pihem mamish. So Rav is telling us that actually there's two cases that our Mishnah is addressing by adding that extra word shogeg. One is the standard case, where they say, go ahead and eat chelev, and he eats chelev. But the other case, which is shogeg, means that what happens if Beis Din says, go ahead and eat chelev, and he's not planning to eat chelev. He's planning to eat shuman, which is permitted fat. Okay? But what happens is, by accident, he gets a piece of chelev mixed for the piece of shuman, and he eats that. So in that case also, normally, if he knows that chelev is aser, and he accidentally eats chelev because he thinks it's shuman, so the halacha is he has to bring his own korban chatas. But in this case, because the Beis Din has already instructed the public that it is permitted to eat chelev, this here too he does not have to bring a korban chatas. And the reason, like Rashi explains, is because had he been informed that this piece is chaylev and not shuman, he would not have desisted from eating it. He would not have desisted from eating it, because he would say, okay, even though I meant to eat shuman, but you know what? Since the Beis Din said that chaylev is mutter, I'll eat this anyway. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it's no different from knowing that it's chaylev. So v'ika da'amri, amar Rava shogeg al piyam hu depater, vol nischalif lo chaylev b'shuman v'achalo chayev. And some say that Rava said just the opposite, that the word shogeg is inserted in the Mishnah to actually point to the opposite point, that it's only when you're directly eating chaylev because of the Beis Din's instructions. But if you think it's shuman, and it ends up turning out to be chaylev, even though you would not have desisted anyway because of Beis Din's instructions, that's not direct enough for the Beis Din to be on the hook, since you also made some error on your own. And therefore you have to bring your own korban chatas. That's the second version. Now, Milsa de Pshita le Rava komi bai le Rami bar Chama. The boy Rami bar Chama, horu Beis Din shechelev mutter v'nischalif lo b'shuman v'achalo mahu. That which was clear to Rava, and as Rava said it as a definitive statement, was actually asked by Rami bar Chama as a question. Rami bar Chama asked, what happens if Beis Din instructs us that chaylev is mutter, and a guy thinking that something is shuman accidentally eats chaylev instead? Is he on the hook, or is Beis Din on the hook? So Amar Rava Tashma, Halach Yachid Va'asa Shogeg Al Piyam V'chulei. Shogeg Al Piyam Lamali Lav La'asuyi Horu Beis Din Shechelev Mutter V'nischalev Lo Chelev B'Shuman V'achalo Potter. So we're going like the first version, that Rava answers it, and he says, look, why does the extra word shogeg appear in our Mishnah? It must be coming to teach that not only if a guy knows that it's chaylev and he eats it based on Beis Din's instructions, is he off the hook, and Beis Din is responsible, but even in a case where he thinks it's shuman, that's what the extra word shogeg is coming to teach, that he'll also be potter over there. Mm-hmm. But not necessarily. Dilma shogeg al piyam hu de potter v'al nischalev l'chel b'shuman v'achalo chayev. But maybe not. Maybe the word shogeg al piyam is not two cases, but rather it's telling me that only when he eats it as a direct result of Beis Din's instructions, where he's not making any mistake, do we say that he's off the hook. But if he thinks it's shuman, maybe taka he will be chayev. And ika da'amri, some say just the other way. Omar Rava Tashma, halach yachid va'asa shogeg al piyam, that if a person goes ahead and acts b'shogeg based on the Beis Din's instructions, my lav shogeg al piyam u'dapater, avol nischalev lo chelev b'shuman v'achalo chayev. That what do you see? That shogeg al piyam means that only when it's a direct result of the Beis Din's instructions that he eats the chelev, thinking that it's chelev and therefore it's permitted because Beis Din said so, is he potter from a korban chatas? So the Gemara says, no, dilma o shogeg o al piyam. Maybe no, maybe it's two cases, like we said in the previous version. Maybe the word shogeg is coming to tell me that even when he thinks it's shuman, and it turns out to be chelev, he's still potter because he would not have desisted had he been notified that it was chelev. Okay, now, biplugta. This whole discussion of whether when a person thinks it's shuman and he eats chelev, after Beis Din had paskin that chelev is mutter, whether or not he's liable for a chatas or not is a machlokas amoraim. As stated as follows: Haru Beis Din shechelev mutter v'nischalev lo chelev b'shuman v'achalo. Rav Amar Potter v'Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayev. That in that case, Rav says he's potter because had he been notified that it was chelev, he would not have desisted. And Rabbi Yochanan says you're chayev because lamaisa you didn't. It wasn't only because of Beis Din's error that you ate the chelev, but rather there was also some personal mistake also that you thought it was shuman. Now meisvei. So let's raise a contradiction. Me'am haaretz ba'asosa prat lemumar. The Torah, when it talks about a person who makes an individual sin, and it says that any am haaretz, any person who's part of the nation of Israel, who sins unintentionally has to bring a korban chatas. What is the words am haaretz coming to exclude? A mumar, a person who no longer associates as a Jew in practice, and typically violates the Torah. So if he would have eaten chelev anyway, right? But he thinks that it's shuman and he's eating it. Even mumars sometimes will eat kosher. Not,
I mean, without the Beis Din ruling.
no, this is not talking about a Beis Din ruling. This Bryce is talking about a mummer who thinks that what he's eating is a piece of kosher fat, and it turns out that he is eating chela fat. Well, the fact is he wouldn't have desisted from eating it even if it was chela fat. And therefore, even though he ate chela unintentionally, he does not bring a korban chatas. That's the point of the brisa. And Reb Shimon ben Yossi Omer Mishum Reb Shimon Harehu Omer Asher Lo Sei Asena Bishkaga ve'Oshem O Hoda Hashav miyidiyaso mevi korban al shigagoso Lo shav miyidiyaso eno mevi korban al shigagoso. And the only thing that Reb Shimon ben Yossi disagrees with, he says, I agree with you in the halacha that a mummer does not bring a korban chatas, but I learned it from a different pasuk. You learned it from the Am Haaretz Ba'asosa. I learned it out from the pasuk that a person would normally not do it had he known that it was aser. But that's Asher Lo Sei Asena Bishkaga ve'Ashem, that he would normally not have done it. So what we see from there is that if a person would desist from doing the act upon notification, only then does he have to bring a korban chatas. But if he wouldn't desist, so then he doesn't bring a korban chatas. That's how I know that a mummer is patur from a korban chatas. Now, v'im isa halo shav miyidiyaso. Now, the question that we're asking is, we're asking this question according to Rabbi Yochanan. According to you, Rabbi Yochanan, you had said that when a person, Beis Din gave an instruction that you're allowed to eat chaylev, and a person thought it was shuman and he ate chaylev, he's chayiv his own korban chatas. But the whole point is, you see from this brisa that you're only chayiv a korban chatas if upon notification that while you're eating chaylev you would desist. But if you wouldn't desist, then you don't have to bring a korban chatas. So then why do you hold Rabbi Yochanan that the guy who's accidentally eating chaylev, thinking that it's shuman, after Beis Din paskin that chaylev is mutter, why would you say that he's chayiv a korban chatas? He also wouldn't desist upon notification. So Amar Rav Papa Kesavar Rabbi Yochanan Kivin Dechim Yisyada Luhu LeBeidina Hadri Behu V'hu Nami Hadar Bei Shav Mi Yidiyasu Karinan Bei V'chayev. So the answer is that this is different from a mumar. A mumar would never desist from eating chaylev. So if he thinks he's eating shuman and he's notified that it's chaylev, he says, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. But this fellow who's a devout Jew is only saying, I don't care whether it's shuman or chaylev based on the fact that Beis Din paskin that it's now mutter. But if Beis Din would discover that they made a mistake, then not only would they retract, but he also would retract his position. And therefore, he's not like a mummer. He's someone that if he was notified that this is chaylev and Beis Din would retract their decision, he would also recoil from the chaylev. So therefore, he's considered to be shav miyidiyaso. He is a person who would desist had he had all the information. And therefore, he's chayav a korban chatas for eating it because he thinks it's shuman. Now, Omar Rav Amoda Rav she'eno mashlim l'rov tzibur ma'itayma or makra bishkaga shikulan bishkaga echas. Now, looking at Rav's shita, what did Rav say? Rav said that as long as Beis Din paskin you're allowed to eat chaylev, even if he thinks it's shuman, he disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan, and he says you're patur from a korban chatas. But Rav will agree in the following to the following. We're going to see later on that there are special circumstances when not only an individual eats chaylev based on Beis Din's instructions, but if the majority of Klal Yisrael eat chaylev, when the majority of Klal Yisrael perform the actual violation, so then it rises to a higher level in halacha, because you have a majority that actually acted upon the instructions of the Sanhedrin. Now, how do we get to that majority? So this is the point that the Gemara is making. If we only have, let's say there's 100,000 Jews, and 50,000 of them ate chaylev based upon the Beis Din's instructions. And then this guy ate chaylev, but not directly because of the Beis Din's instructions, but rather because he thought he was eating shuman. Does he make it now 50,000 plus 1 to comprise a majority? So even Rav will agree that he doesn't. Because even though Rav says he's patur from a korban chatas and is no different from if he had known that it was chaylev, but nevertheless he's not in the same category of shogeg as everyone else is. Everyone else is shogeg because they know they're eating chaylev and they're acting upon the instructions, the erroneous instructions of Beis Din. But he's eating chaylev not because he's acting upon the erroneous instructions, but rather because he thinks it's shuman. And therefore he cannot conjoin with the 50,000 to make it a legal majority because it's not the same form of shogeg. Okay, let's go on. Bein sha'asu va'asa imahin chulei. Now, it makes the Mishnah, if you remember from both the Reisha and the Seif of the Mishnah had said it makes no difference whether the guy eats chaylev together with Sanhedrin, eats it after Sanhedrin, or even eats it before Sanhedrin. In all cases, in the first case, he's potter, and in all cases, in the second, where he knows that Beis Din is making a mistake, he's chayev. So, lama leila misnei kolhani. Bishlam Reisha lozu afsu katani. Alaseifa de l'chiyuva ibcha mi boile. Really, the Gemara's question is the ordering. I understand the ordering in the first part. It's telling me the least novel, the least chiddush, and building up to the greatest chiddush. Not only if he eats it together with the Sanhedrin, so they're modeling for him that behavior. And not only if he eats it after the Sanhedrin, so he's not mamish sitting at the same table with them, but they've already demonstrated to him. And not only if they've already demonstrated to him, but even if they just tell him, and he goes ahead and eats it before they eat it, even in that case, he's going to be off the hook. The Sanhedrin has to bear the responsibility. So that's going from the least novel to the most novel. But in the Seifa, the ordering should be just the opposite, that he's chayiv not only if he ate it independently of Sanhedrin, but even if he ate it together with the Sanhedrin. So the order should have been just the opposite. So the Gemara says, Zu ve'in tzarach lomar zu katani. That no, there are times in Mishnah where you go from the least novel to the most novel. And sometimes when you go to the most novel to the least novel. So sometimes you build up the novelty, and sometimes you go in descending order. So therefore, don't be surprised that we didn't change the order. For symmetry purposes, we kept the order the same. Next, V'yada echad mehen sheto o talmud v'roi lahora. Then the Mishnah says that either one of the members of the Sanhedrin knows that they're making a mistake, or he's just a very wise Talmud Chacham that he's able to paskin shailas on his own, and he knows the Sanhedrin is making an error. Why did you have to give both examples? Tarti lamali. So Amar Rava itzterich salka daita chamina hani mili gomer v'saver v'l gomer v'lo saver lo. So Rava says, I'll tell you why. The extra language is telling me that I might have thought that he has to be such a Talmud Chacham that not only does he have a lot of knowledge, but he also can extrapolate from one law to the other and be able to paskin shailas. So that's the chiddush. Therefore, is that even though he's not yet ready to paskin in all shailas, but as long as he has a large database of knowledge, and he knows based on his database of knowledge that the Beis Din is making a mistake, that's enough for him to be smart enough to say that he has to bear personal responsibility when he eats the chaylev. So Amar le Abaya lahora gomer v'saver mashma. 1 second, says Abaya. How can you say that that's what the second case in the Mishnah is talking about? If it says that he's already ready to paskin shailas, it must mean that not only does he have knowledge, but he can extrapolate in order to paskin people's shailas. So Amar le ana hachi kamina ime hahi hava amina hani mili gomer v'saver aval gomer v'lo saver lo tana ruoi lahora mi Mishnah yisera. So afilu gomer v'lo saver saver v'lo gomer. So what I'm just saying, says Rava, is you're right. Both cases that are listed in the Mishnah are either a member of the Sanhedrin or someone who can paskin shailas, are both people who both have a lot of data in their knowledge base and also can extrapolate to paskin shailas. But why did the Mishnah have to be repetitive like that? The repetitiveness itself is an indication that even if he's not yet ready to paskin shailas, but he has a large amount of knowledge, so much to know that the Sanhedrin is making an error, that's enough for him to bear personal responsibility. It's just based on the extraneousness of the language. Next, Roy lahora v'chulei, he's able to paskin shailas, but he's not a member of the Sanhedrin. Kagon man, Amarava kagon Shimon ben Azai v'Shimon ben Zoma. What are examples of this? Ben Azai and Ben Zoma. You see from here that their names were Shimon. Both of their names were Shimon. And you notice that their names were not Rebbe Shimon ben Azai or Rebbe Shimon ben Zoma, but just Shimon ben Zoma, Shimon ben Azai. Why? Because they did not put themselves in a position of being a rabbinic leader of the community. They didn't want to put themselves in that position. They were perpetual students in the yeshiva. They did not want to paskin shilas. And yet, they're an example of someone who has so much knowledge that he would be able to bear personal responsibility if he ate the chaylev. So, Amar le Abaye ki agavna mezidu. So this was, what I thought Mendel's question was, right? Which is, if he knows that Beis Din is making a mistake and he goes ahead and eats chaylev anyway, so why should he bring a korban chatas? He's not a shogeg anymore. He knows for sure what he's doing is wrong. But let me show you a brisa that seems to say that explicitly, because it says ba'asosa echas, that when a person commits an act that you're not supposed to do, he has to bring a korban chatas. So yachid ha'osa mipi atzmo chayav b'horas Beis Din potter. So if he does it of his own volition, so he has to bring a korban chatas. But if he does it based on Beis Din's instructions, he's potter. Ketzad, what's the illustration? Haru Beis Din shechelav mutter v'noda le'echad me'en sheto o talmud yoshu lifnei v'roi lo ra kigon Shimon ben Azai yachol yehi potter. So that if the Beis Din paskins that chelav is now permitted to eat, and one of the members of the Sanhedrin who's in the minority knows that they're making a mistake, or a student who's sitting in front of the Sanhedrin knows that they're making a mistake, like Shimon ben Azai, who has enough knowledge. So you might think that if they go ahead and eat chaylev, they're going to be potter or korban, so Talmud Omer ba'asosa, echas. No, he has to do it based on his own volition. Yachid ha'osa al pi atzmo chayev b'horas Beis Din potter. So it's only because he's doing it based on the Beis Din's instructions that he's potter from a korban chatas. But if he does it based on his own knowledge, and he knows the Beis Din is making a mistake, so then he's chayev a korban chatas. So the Brisa says that explicitly. So elahechi mishkachasla. So how do you reconcile it? Kigon diyada da'aser v'katoy b'mitzvah lishmo divrei chachamim. L'didi nami d'to b'mitzvah lishmo divrei chachamim. So the answer is like this. Both for the Mishnah and the Brisa, we're talking about a fellow who knows that the Beis Din is making a mistake. But his fundamental error is, I know that chaylev is aser, but I also believe that it's a mitzvah to listen to the words of the sages, even when they're making a mistake. Now, this requires a tremendous amount of unpacking, which we don't have time for. You've probably heard this famous drasha, Lo sasur min hadavar asher yagidu lecha yaminu smol. Do not digress from what the rabbis tell you right or left. And like Rashi on the pasuk says, even if they tell you that your right is your left and your left is your right, you still have to listen to them. This Gemara seems to say that when you know definitively that the rabbis are wrong, you're not allowed to listen to them. So if you know that they're telling you that chaylev is permitted, but you know that chaylev is not permitted, you shouldn't listen to them. The reason why this guy has to bring a korban chatas is he's in error. He thinks that even when they tell me that chaylev is permitted and he knows they're making a mistake, I still have to listen to them. And therefore I can go ahead. That's his error. And because of that error, he brings a korban chatas. But he's not bringing a korban chatas for eating the chaylev. In a sense he is, but it's not directly because of the chaylev, but rather because he thought that there's a mitzvah to listen to the chachamim even when they're in error. Okay, so how do you reconcile that with the Yaminu Small? Okay, we leave that for now. We won't be able to analyze that. Now, Zeh HaKlal HaTola, but by the way, I just want to point out, you do see that there are limitations to that. People who say that you have to listen to the rabbis even when you know that they're wrong, you see that there are limits to that. So sometimes you have to use seichel. Yeah. What? The Raglim are a good example, unless you want to argue they didn't have the status of the Chachamim of the generation. But anyway, okay. Za klal hatola ba'atzmo chayv. So the general rule is that anytime you base it on your own discretion, and that's the reason why you're eating chaylev, you're going to be chayva. When you base it on the Beis Din's discretion, so then you're going to be potter. So li'isuye mai. So why do you need a za klal at the end? What is that coming to include? Li'isuye mevoet bahora. What it means is that, let's say this guy is not a Talmud Chacham, But he's someone who, when the rabbis say that you can do something, he never listens. He always likes to disregard the chachamim. He says, oh, those rabbis, right? You see, they even had those kinds of people in the times of the Gemara also. He says, if the person goes ahead and eats chaylev, but not because the rabbis paskined it, but because he's always critical of the rabbis, so this is a kind of person that once he eats the chaylev can't say, oh, I ate it because of the rabbis. So you never listen to the rabbis. And so therefore, you're going to have to bring your own carbon chatas. And tola beveistin lisuye horu beistin v'yadu shetoru v'chazru bahem. Now, what's the next part where a person is tola beveistin? What's the zeh klal that anyone who relies on beistin is going to be potter? That's talking about a case where even, let's say, the beistin paskin that chaylev is mutter, and then they realize they made an error and they retracted. But I didn't hear about it yet. So I went ahead and ate chaylev, not realizing that the basin retracted. So the chiddush is that even though the basin already retracted, I'm still putter because I didn't know that they retracted. So the Gemara says, behedja katanila. But why does the Mishnah need to say that in a zeh klal? We're going to see in the next Mishnah that that's specified explicitly in the next Mishnah. So tani v'hadar mefars. The answer is you're right. First it said it in the form of zeh klal, the general statement that alludes to that halacha, and then it spells it out explicitly. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel zu divrei Rav Yehuda val chachamim omrim yachid shasa behoras beis din chayev. So this is where we get into a whole turning upside down our Mishnah, because basically what Shmuel is telling us is that our Mishnah is not according to halacha. The Mishnah that we have in front of us goes according to only to Rabbi Yehuda, but we paskin like the chachamim. What's the machlokus between the two? According to Rabbi Yehuda, if based in paskins that chaylev is mutter, but only one shmendrik goes ahead and eats chaylev based on their psak, so he's not off the hook. He's not off the hook, according to the chachamim. Only according to Rabbi Yehuda is he off the hook. But according to the chachamim, the only time that individuals are off the hook is if a majority of Klal Yisrael goes ahead and commits that Aveira. Then we say that because the majority committed the Aveira, they're off the hook. So that's what Aval Chachamim Amrim Yachid Shosbaros based in Chayev. So okay, now my Rebbe Yehuda. Where's the brisa to show that Rebbe Yehuda is of the opinion of our Mishnah? The Tanya im nefesh achas techata bishkaga ba'asosa. That if one soul sins unintentionally in its action. So harei elu gimel miutim. So and ha'osa mipi atzmo chayiv bahoras based in potter. So this is fleshed out more in Maseches Shabbos, where it talks about a person who violates Shabbos b'shogeg. And the Gemara over there infers from this 3 different miutim to exclude. Number 1, it has to be nefesh achas, one person, to exclude a situation where 2 people are doing the malacha. Techeta vishgaga, that it has to be unintentional. That excludes another scenario. And ba'asosa, when it commits the act, means that that it has to do it only based upon the person's own volition. So harei elu gimel miutin ha'osa mipi atzmo chayev bahoras based in part. But you see from that word ba'asosa that he's got to do it of his own volition, thinking that it's permitted. But if he does it based on Beistin's instructions, thinking that it's permitted, so then he's going to be potter. And that's exactly like our Mishnah, that any time Beistin rules that something is permitted, even if only one person goes ahead and follows Beistin's instructions, that person is off the hook. Now, my Rabbanan, where do we see that the Rabbanan disagree? The Tanya, Adayin ani omer miut kol shechatu chayavin, she'en Beistin mevin al yedehen par. So I might think that if a minority of Klal Yisrael follow Beistin's erroneous instructions, they should be liable individual carbon chatases, because why? Because Beistin only has to bring this bull when the majority of the congregation sins, and not when the minority sins. So Rov kahal shechatu yuputurin sharei Beistin mevin al yedei par. So you might think that then all the time, when a majority of Klal Yisrael sins, they should always be off the hook because the Beistin brings a bull, and that bull covers everyone's individual sin. So Talmud Omer me am haaretz afilu ruba va'afilu kula. And therefore the pasuk says, me am haaretz, even the entire nation when they sin, everyone has to bring an individual korban chatas. B'mai, so now let's clarify this brisa. I know it doesn't make any sense the way it appears in front of us. So b'mai, what are we talking about? Ilema b'shigigas ma'isa based in shelo b'haras based in. If you're going to tell me that it made an independent error, that let's say a whole group of Jews ate chaylev, but not based on based in's psak, just thinking that chaylev is mutter. Now, maya vidatayu. So based in maya vidatayu, shelo b'haras based in mi maisu, based in mi maisu. Shelo b'hora. So why then would the brisa say that the Beis has to bring a has to bring a bull? If everyone thought that something was shuman and they ate and it turned out to be chaylev by accident, and that's the reason why they ate the chaylev, then that's not the Beis fault. So why should Beis have to bring a bull to atone for that? So ela b'hora. So it must be that the Beis made the mistake. V'haki ksiv me'am ha'aretz b'shigigas ma'isuhu dichsiv. But 1 second, it says that the am ha'aretz made the mistake. So it sounds like they're the ones who made the error, not the Beis. So how do you reconcile it? Elalav hachi ka'amar. So you have to read the brisa as follows: Miut kahal shechatu b'shigigas ma'isa chayavin she'ein Beis mevin al yedeihem par b'hora. So the way you read it is like this. When a minority makes an error based upon Beis Din's erroneous psak, the individuals have to bring a korban chatas because the Beis Din does not bring a bull to atone when only a minority of people sinned. Ha'hein chayavin, so because the Beis Din is liable for the bull. So the individuals are chayiv to bring their own chatas. Yachol rov tzibur shasu b'shigigas ma'isa yu peturin sharei Beis Din mivin aleim par b'hora. Now you might think, so the converse therefore would be that when the majority of people sin, so then Beis Din has to bring a bull, and everyone else is off the hook. Everyone else is pater. But Talmud Omer me'am ha'aretz. But that's normally true when they ate the chaylev because of the instructions of the Beis Din. But the extra words me'am ha'aretz tells me afilu rubo, that even when a majority of Klal Yisrael sin, but not because of Beis Din's psak, but rather because they thought it was shuman, so then every person has to bring his own korban chatas. So the bottom line is that we see from this brisa that according to the Chachamim, that the only time that individuals are off the hook for eating chaylev is only when a majority of Klal Yisrael did it. But if a minority of Jews did it, so then each person has to bring his own korban chatas, not like our Mishnah. So just a few more lines and we're done. Amar Rav Papa mimai dilma lohein velo Beis Din. How do you know? Maybe what the brisa means to say is that when a minority of Jews sinned based upon Beis Din's erroneous instruction, then both the kahal and Beis Din are off the hook, and no one brings a korban chatas. But ihachi mai iria de kamahader al ruba lichiyuva lav michal demiut behora kaimale demichayvu behora v'nihader bereish al miuta demichay b'shigigas ma'isa l'basof nihader al ruba lichiyuva b'shigigas ma'isa. Elolav midalo mehader al miut demechayv b'shigigas ma'isa u'v'sof mahader al ruba l'chiyuv b'shigigas ma'isa shma mina miut behora chayavin hein kisba u'seira b'shlo behora b'shigigas ma'isa chayavin. Okay, so I read a whole bunch of text, but what it boils down to is like this, because this is I think a little bit overly verbose from what we're normally used to seeing in the language of the Gemara. What the Gemara is basically saying is like this. Look at the logical flow of the brisa. The brisa started off by saying, under what circumstances are individuals chayav? And it said, the individuals are chayav when the Beis Din does not have to bring its own bull. Therefore, what do we say? We say that in that situation, that individuals are chayav. So why didn't the brisa transition to state that let's look at situations where Beis Din is chayiv to bring a bull, or like in other words, So, my area to kamahadr al ruba l'chiyuva. He says, why is it that the Mishnah, the Brisa rather, that we just quoted, immediately transitioned to cases where the majority who sin are liable to bring their own carbon chatas? Doesn't that imply lav michlal demiyut bahora kaimale demichayvu bahora? So that must mean because the Brisa took it as a given that when a minority sin based upon the erroneous instructions of Beis Din, they are always going to be liable. V'nihader bereisha al miuta demichayev b'shigigas maisa, ulabasof nihader al ruba l'chiyuva b'shigigas maisa. Why didn't the Brisa then talk about a case where a minority sin, not based on the instructions of Beis Din, but rather based on their own mistake that they thought it was Shuman? The fact that the Mishnah does not distinguish between a case of a minority who sins, and it doesn't distinguish between whether they sinned because of the Beis Din's instructions or whether they sinned because of their own error thinking it was Shuman, that in itself shows me that the Brisa takes it as a given definitively that no matter what, a minority who sins always has to bring their own carbon chatas. And that's the proof, says the Gemara, that that a minority who sins, according to the Chachamim, will always have to bring their own, the individuals will always have to bring their own carbon chatas. The Beis Din is off the hook, and the individuals have to bring their own carbon chatas. It's based on the cadence and flow of the Brisa that transitions immediately from one case of the minority sinning and then immediately addresses the majority. In the case of the majority, there we do bifurcate. We do actually say it depends what their chatas is based on. If it's based on Beis Din's instructions, so they're off the hook. But if it's based upon their own error because they think it's Shuman, so then they're responsible. But we don't have a similar distinction that's made by a minority. That proves to me that for a minority who sins, even if they're sinning based on Beis Din's erroneous instructions, they still have to bring their own carbon chatas. And this is where we'll hold it for today.